New Year. Obviously, we're broadcasting live, so opening statement is to welcome everybody to this Inverclyde Council Social Work Social Care Scrutiny Panel. This meeting has been held remotely and also in person and will be filmed and recorded for live and subsequent broadcasts available through the Council's website. The Council is a data controller under the General Data Protection Regulations and the Data Protection Act 2018. We broadcast and record council meetings to fulfil a public task obligation to enable members of the public to observe the democratic process. Data collected during the process will be retained in accordance with council published policies available through the council's website. Members of the council are reminded that they should follow the council's established meeting protocols, including the use of the chat facility, and that comments made in the chat facility are visible to all participants in the meeting, which may include members of the public who have also received invites to the meeting. Can we check a roll call, please?
We have apologies from Provost Mackenzie. We have no substitutions. Convener will now move to a roll call before asking for declarations of interest. Can the following members please indicate they're present at the meeting, either in person or remotely? Councillor Armstrong.
In person.
Councillor Brennan.
Present remotely.
Councillor Brooks.
In chamber.
Councillor Cassidy.
Present in chamber.
Councillor Daisley. Councillor Jackson.
In chambers.
Councillor McCluskey.
Present in the chamber.
We've got apologies from the Provost. Councillor Quinn.
Present remotely.
Councillor Reynolds.
Present in the chamber.
Councillor Robertson.
Present remotely.
Are there any declarations of interest?
Convener, I declare an interest in item 5 as a member of Inverclyde Homes Board, but as such, I don't believe it is politically from taking part in discussion at item 5.
Okay, thank you, Graham. Martin.
Yeah, I have a question to item 8 on the agenda by reason of a close family relative residing with the care homes mentioned in the report. However, I've applied to reject the test and consider I have an interest in declaring this an update report for noting the care home in question is not the subject of any specific commentary or officer recommendations.
I have applications cleared to item 8 in the agenda by reason of a relative of the board of one of the organisations mentioned in the report. I've applied to object to the best and do not consider I have any interest to declare because this is an update report for voting and not subject to any officer recommendations.
Okay, no one's indicating online that there any declaration of interest? No. Okay, can we proceed to agenda item number 2, revenue and capital budget report? Craig, over to you.
Thank you, Convener. This is a revenue and capital budget report and revenue outturn position as at the 31st of October 2022. The projected outturn position up to the end of October, or period 7, is a projected underspend of £1.2 million. The main reasons for this are the projected underspends are due to vacancies across all services and projected underspends, especially in other persons' budgets, especially in the external home care budget. Mental health is also expected to underspend in the region of around £300,000, again mainly due to vacancies and client commitments. This is partially offset by a £236,000 overspend in the physical and sensory part of the budget, and this is mainly due to increased client commitments during the year. In regards to capital position, as per the paper, the total capital budget is just over £12 million. We had planned to spend about £1.346 million this year. However, this has now been revised to £562,000 this year, and this is mainly due to slippage in the timeline of the new disability facility, which we now expect to commit in 23-24 onwards. Finally, in the earmarked reserves, we started the year with reserves of just over £28 million, and please note that this is the full IWB reserve, which is here, and by the year end we're projecting to have about £14.5 million of that left at year end. Obviously, there's a lot in that report. I'm happy to take any questions you have.
Okay, thank you. Colleagues, do we have any questions? Martin, you say the first one.
Thanks, Vera. Thanks, Craig, for that report. And just starting where you left off on the earmark reserve, you might guess the question I'm going to ask. The 8.1 million COVID reserve is listed to obviously run down to zero, but has the government given any indication yet of how that money is to return to them?
Through yourself, Convener, yes, we are still waiting on the budget from Scottish Government. But from that, there was a discussion that took place with the overall CFOs at the end of last year, and they have indicated that a letter is going to come out to us fairly shortly.
Okay.
Just a quick follow-up, Craig. If the letters, does this money need to be returned by the end of the financial year, so this needs to be resolved by the end of March, is that right?
That is correct, yes.
Right. So we would expect them to deliver a mechanism to do this quite shortly. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks, Martin. I don't see anything in the chat facility. No else got questions on that? Okay, move on. New business salary you've been up to in the National Care Service?
Convener, thanks through yourself. No update, obviously, due to the holiday period. Things will start to pick up again this week. The focus has been on operations through the winter, so I don't have anything to share with the committee, but I agree with yourself, Convener, that this would stay on as new business, so we've got that opportunity to update members if when new information comes on board. So no change in direction, the status quo remains as was before the holiday period.
Okay, thanks, Alan. Martin, you have a question on the National Care Service?
Yeah, thanks, Vera. Alan, I understand you might not be able to answer this, but one of the things that came out of the Scottish budget was the lack of clarity around the funding for the National Care Service. So I'll just read something that was in the Scottish Parliament Information Centre's briefing on the budget. It said, the budget document states that the funding has been included for the NCS in the budget for 23-24, but it's not clear how much has been set aside for the NCS, and the NCF funding is included under the broader heading of National Care Service / Adult Social Care. This adds further to the lack of clarity around funding for this flagship policy. I'm just wondering if there's been any, from any of the professional networks you're involved in or any of the other networks you might be involved in, any additional clarity since then around the budget for the NCS in this coming year?
Convener, so far there's been no further clarity.
Okay, thanks, Alan. I don't see any questions in the chat over there. Okay, we move on to item number 4, and that is the Care Home Assurance Pool Themes and Trend Report, and that is Laura, I believe.
Hi, yeah, can you hear me okay?
Yeah,
Lovely, thank you. So this report I'm bringing to you today purely for information and noting. It's a report that's already been to our SMT and our Clinical Governance Committee, which just outlines the care home assurance tool process that we undertook with the 21 care homes at the end of last year, sort of over the summer up until autumn time. So just bringing it, I say, for information and noting if you've got any questions.
Thanks, Laura. I think Councillor Booth, do you have a question?
Convener, not actually a question, but just to thank for this report, because I think it's welcome to actually be able to see. We can look back in horror of what happened, obviously, over pandemic issues, and it's great to see something in paper, black and white, and to hear the reassurance from officers that we have like this in hand.
Okay, thanks. Councillor Beasley, if you have a question.
Yeah, this report is great. What I would like to see, if possible, is broken down individual reports for each care home. Is that something that's possible?
So every care home does have a report, yes. They're about 44 pages long each, so that's quite significant. But yes, every home has got their own report, which are then used to compile this. So those reports, I would be keen to go back to the homes to make sure they were happy for us to share those, because they're very much their reports that we write in conjunction with them, but they are available and I can speak to the care homes if you'd like to see them.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thanks very much.
James will make sure that all that all okay, just to try and get information you look for. Councillor Robertson, you have a question?
I do, thanks very much, Convener. I've been kind of coming and going, so apologies if I slip out.
Oh, no.
My question is about Sorry, am I still with you?
Yeah.
Yeah, good. Right, my question is about 4.9, the recommendations, and I just note that it's framed in terms of maximising outcomes from the process, and I'm just wondering if I'm looking at the bullet points that are there, and I'm not really sure what the journey is towards outcomes for the test. Again, it just seems to be quite about this is the process, and so I'm just wondering if there's any more clarity that can be provided in terms of making the link between these particular recommendations and the outcomes that we're trying to achieve.
Yeah, of course. So what happens is every single care home, as part of the report, has got their own individual action plan. So that's where you'll get that real detail of what it is that each individual home is working to improve. And that is monitored through our commissioning colleagues and also our care home liaison nurse colleagues. And then you're absolutely right that those recommendations that are there are the much more higher level actions that we're working for, which are owned by myself and the other team members, to just make sure that every bit of learning from this is taken forward, and that we continue to develop the process as we move forward. Because I think it's fair to say that every time we do it, we pick up new things and new learning. So all aspects of the learning from the visits are picked up and monitored.
Thanks for that. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Laura. I don't see any more questions. We'll move on to item number 5, which is the Bagatelle report. Social work and social care oversight. Laura, I believe.
Yeah, hi. So this report is quite a brief report, really, and this report is just giving you some background information regarding the incident that took place at Bagatelle Court in August 2022. At the sheltered housing complex, there was a fire. This isn't about going through the detail of the actual fire and the outcomes for the individuals. This is purely about the incident debriefing and how we as a team got together and looked at, could we learn from how as a health and social care team we responded to the incident. Very much for information and noting, and you will see that there was recommendations in there that have gone to SMT and are being actioned and moved forward with our civil contingencies partners. Happy to take questions.
Alan, do you have any?
Marina, just also to say through yourself, members will be interested to know, I think Councillor Robertson asked the last time we talked about this, there are 11 families that are currently still displaced as a result of this incident. So River Clyde homes have people in other temporary accommodation and with a view to moving people either back to their own place once the works are being completed or other options. So I just thought it's important that members know there are 11 families still displaced as a result of this incident, which was a very serious incident and caused significant damage to the property.
Thanks, Elizabeth. Do you have a question?
I do. First of all, I did want to say thank you for providing this. Alan's absolutely correct. I had asked for this at the last meeting, so thanks for providing it. It's almost kind of it's closed off a lot of questions that I had, but opened up a whole bunch of other ones, unfortunately. The first one being, is there a tandem report, or is there a tandem piece of work that's been done to get learning from the perspective of the residents and their families? Because obviously I get that we've got staff who've absolutely had the chance to debrief, and it's entirely appropriate in terms of our systems and processes, but the experience of families, have we done a similar exercise with them so that they get an opportunity?
From my perspective, Councillor, no, we haven't done that piece of work, but Riverside Homes were part of this group. So I actually invited them along to the debrief group in terms of that openness and transparency, and they were doing their own report, which we haven't had shared with us at this point. But I'm not sure if they took that aspect of actually speaking to the families and the residents, because of course they're working closer with them than we are on this ongoing stages now.
Can I come back in?
Yes,
is that okay?
Yeah, Elizabeth.
Thanks, Colin. So when if River Clyde Homes are doing that additional piece of work, is that something that we can get sight of as well? Because again, I think there's some really critical things that from the experience of the families we really need to be aware of across the system.
I'm definitely happy to ask that question and provide feedback to the next meeting.
That would be lovely, thanks. And I don't know who to put this marker down with, but I would really like an offline conversation about the insurance context around this, if that's okay. It's not for committee, but I wouldn't mind putting a marker down to have a conversation with someone about it, if that's okay.
Yeah, that's fine. I'll make sure one of the officers get back to you on that, if that's okay.
Thank you, Colin.
Right, I don't see any more questions. Sorry. I think that would be
That's thanks, Colin. This is a question. I'm not looking for answers to the specific questions raised in the report, because I know that's not our role here. But I just want to get some assurance that some of the questions that are raised in here, how they are being taken forward. So, for example, there's mention in here of how would the incident be managed out of hours. What would have happened if the weather had been worse. It's things like suggestions for future learning. Like, obviously, this paper to the committee isn't the sum of all the work that's been done on this. So it would just be useful just to understand the process that behind this report of what's been done to kind of ensure that if anything like this, hopefully it will never happen again, but if anything does happen again, that we're building on the learning of our experience in this event.
Absolutely happy to come back on that. So we've had conversations with our civil contingencies lead, as well as SMT and our local lead for emergency planning, Emma Cummings. And what we're doing is putting forward, and we're going to pull together a training session. We've got 35 staff who've put their names forward to be part of training. And the idea of that training is that, yes, we'll have some conversations about the Civil Contingencies Act and our actual responsibilities within that and our individual roles within that. But we're also planning on doing some of that incident type work where we look at specific incidents in groups and do some group work about how would we deal with that, what would our roles be. So that would include work on, if it was this weather, if it was that incident, and trying to look at different scenarios and pick out some learning. So that's all being built into it, and it's going to be a very bespoke session that we pull together so that we cover all the things that we've mentioned in there.
Thank you.
Graham.
Thanks so much, Gabriella. Just a question, Mr. Stevenson. You made a comment or a statistic of 11 families are currently in sort of rehoused temporarily. Can you confirm, are any of those families happy to stay where they are? That's a higher number than I was aware of, so I'm not too sure I've deducted the families who now wish to stay in that temporary accommodation.
Convener, through yourself, my understanding is there are 11 family units who are still displaced or looking to move. So I'm happy to double check that figure, but that's the figure I've been given.
Right.
Okay, I don't see any more questions. I think it's worth thanking everybody involved in that. The speed of our communication was excellent. So from the Scrutiny panel, a big thank you to everyone involved. We have no more questions, I think. So we'll move on to item 6. It's the Children and Families Performance Refresh. Audrey, over to you on that, thanks.
Yeah, thank you. This report was prompted by Children and Families Performance against 2 measures contained within the Council's overarching performance report for 2021-22. Kate Rocks thought it was important to offer the panel a context for this performance, and importantly, the actions being taken by the service to improve matters. So the first of those performance measures are about the percentage of looked after children with a permanence plan within 6 months of being accommodated. This is an important measure as it speaks to the potential issue of drift within the child's looked after journey. When the service looked at this measure and how it had been applied, it raised several important contextual considerations which I thought was important to share. And that's regarding how children can be looked after. There are 4 ways in which children can be looked after: at home, in kinship care and foster care, or with adoptive parents. This measure speaks only to the latter, and this would appear to have precluded activities associated with the other 3 equally valid looked after arrangements. In narrowing the focus in this way, the timely delivery of these plans has been complicated by requiring parenting capacity assessments to be put in place to develop these plans. These assessments are significant and detailed piece of work. So that's a wee bit of context around the actual performance for the indicator. What we're doing going forward is there's a recognition that the service needs to embrace the PACE improvement methodology for permanence and care excellence. The service did begin this journey a number of years ago, but COVID disrupted the process. We have, however, held the first of several workshops looking to develop our practice in this area. The first of these took place on the 15th of December, and a second workshop involving key first line managers is scheduled for the 19th of January this month. We also intend to use the considerable experience sitting within our foster and adoption team to support our area team social workers in their permanence work. This will help to hone their skills in this complex area of work and improve the planning process. The second measure referenced in the report is to do with the percentage of child protection review case conferences taking place within 110 days. When we've looked into this, our performance in this particular measure, what we've discovered is some issues to do with data quality. We found that there's been a 90-day cut-off used rather than 110 days. So when you sort of address that, it becomes 37%, which is not fantastic. But the other issue that's impacted here is just the small sample size, and using percentages in that context can have a bit of a distorting effect. For example, there were 7 cases where the measure was missed by 1 or 2 days, and if these were included, the figure rises to 66%. So there is, I say, a bit of an issue there just because of the small numbers involved. There's also a case for changing the measure itself, and that's because the measure speaks to the service's performance against a process. It doesn't really speak to the service's impact on the lives of our children and their families and the outcomes being achieved. There's also new national guidance for child protection in Scotland, and that extends the review period from 110 days to 6 months. So what we're doing at the moment is, whilst we await obviously the new head of Children's Services and Justice coming into role, I have taken the decision and reinstated the quarterly service performance framework that was operating before COVID, but got sort of paused whilst we were sort of working our way through the challenges presented by COVID. What this framework will do will enable children and family service managers to review data in real time, opposed to at the end of a financial year, and it will go some way to addressing both data inputting and any performance issues much earlier into the reporting cycle. The service is committed, as mentioned in the report, to a refresh of its performance measures to better align these to evidence and, where possible, outcomes and impact, opposed to outputs. This is a conversation that it's important for the new head of service to lead on, and it would be the service's intention to bring a further report to the scrutiny panel when this is complete. Happy to take any questions.
Okay, thank you. Francesca, got a question for myself?
Thanks very much, convener, and thanks very much to Audrey for that context that was given there, because I think when I read the papers, this was probably the paper, as you said, as the paper itself stated, you know, it kind of mentioned that there were some concerns there. I don't know if the word risk was actually used, so I really appreciate the candour that this has been shared with, and also the context. I think it's just flagged up these recruitment issues and how potentially sort of stressful that must be for staff at all levels, and that some gaps that are there. So I think with all that context, it's probably changed my question slightly, and it does seem to be a bit of a vicious circle with, you know, newly qualified social workers, and then that becomes even more challenging, and then I think that in turn can affect recruitment. But I suppose just to get a little bit more detail, because I think I was a bit concerned when I read it that there was some potential risk, I suppose, to staff's protection, their well-being. And also, I think when we saw that about the case conferences, a bit of concern about the young people. But I suppose, like you've said, the national guidance is really saying that it could move up to 6 months. So we're not too impacted there. But I think it was just I wanted to know a wee bit more about the risks involved with the challenges that there are here. Thanks.
I think, I suppose what this is maybe demonstrating is just how much of a focus there's been on the front door of, the day-to-day business and children and families. And obviously that some of the implications when you're so focused on that front door and the activity around that about what's happening, to young people and further involved in the system. From a staffing point of view, what I've covered is I think that what we recognise is that we do have a bit of a mixed experience level within the service, and we do have a lot of experience sitting in our foster and adoption team, and we've already started a process where we are team tagging some of that experience with some of our social workers to help with that training and development and confidence building around that particular area of work.
Okay, Francesca, you have any more questions?
Yeah, okay, thank you, thanks.
Right, thank Francesca. Elizabeth?
Thanks, Camilla. I think the first thing I would say is it's probably quite, I'm still probably a wee bit kind of rattled by the notion that we've been measuring this for a long time and there's still issues with definition of terms. That's probably still a bit of an issue for me, to be honest. The second thing though, I would completely 100% back what Audrey's saying in terms of looking at when the measures are measured are the more appropriate again, because it really the impact on the children, and like I say, looking at measuring a particular thing that the system says is the thing that's going to tell you whether things are okay or not, it may not be the right thing for the family. So I would welcome that being looked at in terms of the validity of the measure, but I'm a bit concerned about we've got here because we're struggling to define terms.
Elizabeth, you were right a wee bit there. Audrey, did you get just what Elizabeth was saying there? Do you want to come back on that, or do you want to repeat it?
What was that? Sorry.
No, it's okay. I think the issue about terminology within the permanence is I suppose I'm not sure that other local authorities necessarily hone in on a particular area. Now, unfortunately, I can't speak to the how we got here because I've only been in this role since October, so I'm not quite sure. I've just been trying to unpick how we are where we are, and what I'm seeing is we've focused on a very narrow area of this work, and it's probably the most complex part of that because it's about that decision on permanent removal of children from their parents. So, but the rationale around how we got to choosing to count that, I'm not entirely clear on. But what I am saying to you today is that we're taking a step back from that, and we really need to reflect on, because there's a lot of really good work done in this local authority around kinship and kinship care and supporting kinship carers, and that's not got counted anywhere here. And I don't think I don't think that's the case across Scotland. So I'm not really sure why we've chosen, as I say, this more complicated bit. It's an important area, but why we've chosen just to focus on that because of the nature of it. It necessarily involves our legal services, so it's always going to be a more rightly so, a more kind of onerous and kind of a lengthy piece of work. So, as I say, what I would say to you is we're taking a step back from that. We do need to think about that, the pace, quality improvement framework, and think about our practice in relation to that. And I suppose to go back to Francesca's question about staff are really committed to this area, and I think we're probably in a place now where we're able to take a step back and do some development work which I don't think just going through the COVID stuff, plus, you know, some of the recruitment issues has meant that we've not necessarily had the capacity to do that. But I think that there is a real sort of motivation to look at this area of work and to look at how we can develop our practice here.
Thanks, Elizabeth. Do you got a question, Phil?
Yes, thanks, convener. First of all, I want to say that I really welcome this report. I mean, there are areas of concern, but I think everyone in the scrutiny panel would rather have the information than not have the information. So, you know, that's very welcome. And I also think that the direction of travel is the right one. There are, you know, there are issues. I mean, I think, you know, for example, in paragraph, whatever it is, 3.3, with my background as a social worker and a foster carer, I fully understand. I think I fully understand the definitions of 4 permanence options, but I think, Audrey, you did mention them, but they are return home, kinship care, adoption, permanent fostering. And I think it'd be helpful if the scrutiny panel all understand that. But moving on, I think it's important that you know, that we do measure these solutions, but we also measure how they hold. You know, we have to measure. You know, we have a permanence plan. It's put into practice. How does it hold? I mean, I'm talking about disruptions here, but I think, generally speaking, I think the direction is absolutely right, and I very much welcome the report. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Pam. That's really interesting. I don't see any more questions. If it's okay, everyone, we'll move on to item number 7. Alan, this is yours. The proposal for the final year MSc social work students to commit to work with underpaid HSCP for 3 years.
Philomena, thanks to yourself. I'm very pleased to bring this report forward as the current Chief Social Work Officer for Inverclyde Council. And someone once famously said you can't keep doing the same things and expect a different outcome. So working closely with Kate and with Craig here to my left-hand side, and Craig's team in the training board will brought forward this proposal moving forward for the scrutiny panel to note. We'll be taking a further report back to the IJB, but we want to go and do what some other partnerships have done across Scotland. We want to go and speak proactively to the final MSc students in main universities in our vicinity to make that offer to them to come in and apply for a job in Inverclyde. And you'll see in the paper there, we're actually looking to assist people and make us an attractive place to come and work, because students will leave these training courses with considerable amount of debt. It's a path that's been trodden already by a couple of other local authorities, and they have done well from that. It won't be the only thing we're going to do moving forward in relation to attracting social workers, because everyone's obviously fishing in the same pool, but we have a very enthusiastic training team that Aileen Maley leads, and we have a new social work and social care training board that we set up just before Christmas that I've got the pleasure of chairing as Chief Social Work Officer. So this is one of many new ways we're going to look to attract, because it's frustrating in the sense, once we get students here to Inverclyde, many of them will apply for jobs, but people still have the perception that Inverclyde's a very far way away from Glasgow, and that it's maybe easier to go and work in one of the bigger authorities. So this piece of work will take us into universities. We'll get talking to the final MSc students, and it will give us a really good chance to attract that group of brand new social workers to come in Inverclyde and to commit, more importantly, for 3 years, which means it gives them a real opportunity to bed in, to make relationships with families. And what we're hoping is those social workers will stay with us and they'll actually enjoy being part of that journey in Inverclyde. So, as I said to you, just the recommendations are to note the proposal moving forward. We'll be taking this report back to the IJB, and also the council are interested in looking and bringing a further report to PNR at some point around some of these the ways we're looking to attract social workers, because it's transferable across the council, and that's a piece of work I'll be getting involved in with other officers in the council to look how can we look at adopting this proposal maybe in other parts of the council. So we'll be happy to take any questions.
Thanks for that, Alan.
Thanks, Convener. It's not a question, it's congratulations really, and I think, you know, Alan, Kate, you know, you've done a fantastic job bringing this forward. It's exactly what we need to be doing. It's innovative, it's creative, and you know, it's a really brilliant piece of work. Thank you.
Okay, no more questions.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, Graham.
Firstly, just associate myself with the Parliament and what a good report and a good idea. But can I actually ask a question on 3.7? I don't know if our legal gurus, obviously, if IGB wants to put up 150k, great, it's their money. If it works, it's fantastic. But what happens if it doesn't work? So 3.7 talks about what happens if it doesn't work. And a letter of undertaking, what legal status does that have? Do we chase people through the courts, which obviously a bad taste in people's mouth? You can imagine the local press if we're chasing people through the courts. So I just wonder, what's the statute? What's the legal statutory of that letter of undertaking?
Maybe I'll kick off through yourself. So in social work, it's custom and practice to use this approach. So generally, when we go and approach people and we ask them to come for 3 years, I did it myself when I went to North Lanarkshire. You sign the undertaking. It's very unusual, probably only through ill health, that people then decide they're not going to commit to that. It's at that point you then decide whether you want to pursue that. But generally speaking, because it is custom and practice, folk who sign up to these deals will see out their 3 years, and actually they tend to stay because they get embedded into that organisation, and especially with the gaps around children and families, when social workers start to become part of those families' lives, it really does, it offers that opportunity for them to see that piece of work through. But custom and practice, but I'll also defer to my legal colleague David if there's anything that David wants to add.
Thank you. Essentially, what the letter of undertaking is the contractual relationship between the student essentially and who become an employee. It would be a contractual arrangement and be for the council to pursue that. Following any default issue they wish to do so, I imagine it would depend on circumstances in each case where they wish to do so.
Thanks very much. I just obviously don't want uncomfortable headlines in the press chasing something. Thanks.
Thanks, McLean. I don't see any more questions, no. I suppose just going back to what we've heard there, I think when the committees to have, I'd like to thank all our social workers and all our social care staff and everybody out there for the months and hard over the last couple of years, Christmas and into the new year. We absolutely understand the pressures they're under and hope this will ease some of that. I think no more questions. We'll now get to private sessions. That's okay.